Hi everyone and welcome to Module 2. So our focus for this module, we're going to be reviewing the ethical theories. And most of these should have been covered uh, during your respective classes on ethics. So like for the criminal justice people, then you had a class on ethics. And then the Intel students, you also had a class on ethics. So a lot of these theories should be reviewed. But again, we don't want to just focus just on the theory. The whole idea of this entire program is application of theory to practice. So when we're looking at the theories, we just want to use this as a basis from which that we can make better decisions in practice. We're not just guessing. So in that vein, we are also going to look at the current ethical issues that are impacting the criminal justice and intelligence fields. So then we want to be able to take ethical theories, use these to help us make great decisions, informed decisions, ethical decisions, in regard to anything that's impacting the criminal justice and intelligence fields. And so also, you're going to continue working on your job research paper and presentations. Now, at this point, you have to have your interviewee identified. That is imperative. And you also have to have a firm plan for how and when you're going to conduct your interview. Identifying the person, you're going to interview, really, locking them down in a time, if it's going to be through email, whatever it happens to be, is imperative because you don't want to get into next week and not even have that locked up. So make sure you have your interviewee identified. Make sure you have your plan for your interview, your questions lined up, what you're going to ask, so that you can move forward and get that everything finalized by the end of this module. So for module 3, all you're doing is writing and your presentation. So, and how we're supposed to use the ethical theories. Now, remember, when we're thinking about ethics, we're not thinking about legal issues, meaning we're not trying to find out, is this legally right? We're trying to find out, is this morally right? Is this an ethical act? So it's, in essence, we're trying to answer the question, what is the right thing to do? Now, many times in society, what is legal and what is ethical are in alignment, but not always. So we're trying to find out if something is ethical. We want to use the ethical theories to help guide us in how to think about an issue. We want how to think about ethics. So we're not using the theories to try to come up with a step-by-step process for what to think. Instead, we're using these ethical theories so that we know what questions to ask as we're looking at an issue. We don't know, how do we dissect this issue? How do we think? Not what do we think, but how do we think to come up with the right course of action? What is the right thing to do? So the theories we're going to review during this module are the following. We're going to look at ethical relativism and ethical absolutism. Now, under absolutism, we are looking at 4 specific theories: teleological theories, deontology, intuition, and virtue theories. And in the next slides, we're going to go over these, a pretty detailed overview. And then for more information, make sure you read your textbook. Your author does a great job of providing examples of how these theories actually can be used in context to help you make better ethical decisions. So ethical relativism is the belief that no single ethical standard applies to all people at all times. So if we put this in a context, this would mean that different societies have different standards, and therefore there's not one standard that applies to all cultures, all people at all times. So one example would be murder. So you could have some societies that say that, or that have the ethical perspective that murder is absolutely wrong and unethical regardless of any circumstance. But then you have other societies that feel that, well, no, an eye for an eye, if the punishment needs to fit the crime. So if the offender commits murder, then he or she should lose their life. That's just. So ethical relativism would say that one cannot state that murder isn't ethical regardless of any circumstance because it's relative. It's relative to the situation, different incidents, and different cultures. Now, interestingly, the problem with the concept of ethical relativism is just by stating that no one should oppose his or her moral beliefs on others is an absolute statement. So it's kind of the concept kind of contradicts itself. So just something to keep in mind if you believe that you're a relativist. Just kind of take that into consideration. Now, we're going to contrast relativism with absolutism. Ethical absolutism can be subdivided into four categories of theories. You have the teleological theories, those that focus on deontology. You have intuition and virtue theories. So teleological theories focus on the end result. So utilitarianism is the predominant teleological theory. And these are the groups of theories that justify the morality of an act based on the consequences. So this means the end justifies the means. Okay, so in the end being the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. So we're not looking at why somebody committed an act. We're looking at if it produced the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people, then that act is considered ethical. In contrast, we have deontology. And these theories focus on the principle of the thing. We must act in a principled way. So regardless if the outcome is good, the means, why did we do something, or our reasons for it. And as long as these reasons are just, the outcome is irrelevant. So if something bad happened because of our actions, it's okay. It's our actions. As long as our actions were ethical, then we're fine. So a common example that's given is, assume you're helping someone who is hit by a car and this person's laying in the middle of the street. In an effort to help, so you have a good principled reason, you want to help for the right reasons, not because you want some kind of gratification for yourself, but because you want to do the right thing and move this person out of the street so that he or she is able to be is not injured anymore. Well, in the process of moving this person, her neck gets moved in such a way that she becomes paralyzed. Now, the deontologist would consider your actions ethical because you acted in a principled way, regardless if the consequences were negative. So let's take a quick minute to review Immanuel Kant. Now, Kant is the most notable deontologist, and basically he offers a set of rules to guide decisions. His most famous rule that he developed was the categorical imperative. And this basically states that you act only according to the maxim by which you can, at the same time, will that it should become universal law. So this is an extension of the golden rule, which existed in religions at the time that Kant came up with the categorical imperative. So it's do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So he attempted to universally guide ethical behavior by testing the morality of an action. So would it be okay if this act were generally practiced and you were the victim of it? Next, we have intuitionism. This is the belief that human beings have a moral sense, like a moral compass, that recognizes instinctively the moral character of an act. For example, a moral sense tells us that helping people is better than hurting people. So if you favor this type of theory, this type of logic, this type of ethical thought, then you believe that you're not relying on rationality, you're relying on feelings or intuition. And last, we have the virtue theory. And this is commonly associated with Aristotle. And this theory considers an act to be good on the basis of the character trait or the virtue of the act. So, for example, giving money to the poor is good because it supports generosity, which is a virtuous trait. So during your act, if you are exhibiting a virtuous trait, then your act is ethical. So your textbook offers an interesting perspective for addressing ethics, and they call this the unified ethic. And what they propose is that if you look at all these four different perspectives, so if you have an issue, if you have an ethical dilemma, say, and you want to find out what is the right thing to do, what is the ethical thing to do, what your author suggests is that you want to look at an issue from all these different angles, from all these different four perspectives. There's certain questions that are associated with each of these perspectives, and this really will help you analyze the issue so that you can develop the best answer. And inside your textbook, there's a series of questions that align with each of these different theories, and I strongly encourage you to read through these. And after talking to several students and teaching this class, countless times, um, and reading several books on, obviously, on ethics, I believe that applying the unified ethic is an excellent way to be able to dissect an issue to help myself included and students and practitioners really examine the issues that are associated with the decision to find out what aligns more closely with the decision maker's own morality and independent thought. I also want to strongly encourage you to look at the ethical scenarios that are detailed in your textbook. By learning from history, by learning of these past scenarios, we can better prepare for the future. We can understand why certain guidelines exist. In many cases, it's to protect people from past injustices. It is really simple to focus simply on what you are focused on in this time. Many cases, people will go back 5 years and they'll think about what's happened over the past 5 years and think that that's in a vacuum. Nothing else existed except for what's happened in these 5 years. And that's obviously not true. We have a history to look at. We want to look at, um, you know, what took place in the past, how issues were addressed in the past, why rules and policies were implemented so that we can build and progress. I, an example of this are the horrors from the Tuskegee syphilis study, where subjects with syphilis were purposely told they did not have the disease and they were denied treatment so researchers could study the effects of not treating the disease. This was a horrible case. But the researchers thought they were doing something for the right reasons. They thought that they were trying to help the greater good, which, if you think about this from an ethical perspective, they were focused on utilitarianism. But they ignored deontology, they ignored the principle. And again, that goes back to using the unified ethic to help you understand the bigger picture. Well, I hope you enjoyed the review of the different ethical theories and you have some ideas on how you can approach different ethical scenarios. And as you'll notice, your final project involves identifying the ethical issues that are associated with what's happening right now in the field, or even from a leadership perspective. But ethics really permeates through everything. So I'm sure this will you'll come across a lot of ethical issues in your research. And right now we're going to be discussing this in the discussion forum for this module. So good luck with the readings, and I look forward to reading your comments in the discussion board.